Welcome back to Freedom Matters. I'm your host, Mark McIntire. Well, for the past few months, we've been unable to broadcast from the plush studios at TVSB, and so we all find ourselves in the Zoom room, which actually is not too bad because we can produce our own things. I like producing my own stuff. Anyway, today we have two individuals who uniquely qualify as interviewees on Freedom Matters. Two individuals who prize the principles and values of individual freedom because they are running, both of them are running actually for seats on the Santa Barbara Unified School District Board of Trustees. And on my left, we have Mr. Brian Campbell. Welcome to the show, Brian. And right in the middle, down below on the screen, we have Mr. Elrawd MacLearn. Welcome, Elrawd. And I must say, I'm going to start with Elrawd here. I mean, anybody who has the word learn in his name is probably a good candidate for a school board, but, you know, I don't know. It's a wonderful coincidence.
It's an unfair advantage.
Yeah, it's an unfair advantage. Exactly. First of all, before we, some of our fans are not really current on how many candidates there are and how many seats there are available. So, Elrawd, can you just fill that in for us? How many candidates are there? How many seats are open?
Certainly, Mark. Yeah, there are 7 candidates running against 3 seats, and I think that's the lay of the land there.
That's a crowded field. That's that's a pretty crowded field.
I would say that Brian and I have a really good chance of getting to those 3 seats because the district has failed the students and the families and the community so egregiously that I think anyone can clearly see that the incumbents have failed, and new change and new ideas and people who actually care about the parents, community, and teachers and learning of the students will fill those positions and have a better outcome in the future.
Excellent. You know, now that we have you on the screen first, let's have you fill in who you are and where you went to school, what you're doing now, and why you are actually running for a seat on the Board of Trustees.
Yeah, so I went to school at UCLA, graduated with a degree in biology.
Congratulations.
And thank you. It was a little difficult. I also utilize that degree now where I work for the Santa Barbara County Public Health Department as a health inspector. And the reason why I'm running is because I know that there are a lot of low-income families here in the district. We actually, here in Santa Barbara County, have the second highest rate of low-income families here in the state. And I personally have come from a low-income minority family myself. And after graduating from college, I spent several years back at home being the de facto parent after my parents' divorce. And I had to, be that father figure at the home and helping my siblings, which there are actually, I'm the third oldest of 11. So after I graduated, there was about 7, both from the same parents. A lot of people ask me that. We're all biologically related.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, my parents divorced, and after I graduated, I went back home, and there were about 6 or 7 of my younger siblings still at home, and I was working, and we were all trying to make ends meet. And in that, we put my younger siblings in public school, and they were in there for several years. And just the lack of literacy, the lack of education, and the lack of instruction in what they were doing was so egregious and so shocking to me that I had to work. I switched jobs and started working a graveyard shift, pulled them out of school, and actually was able to homeschool them in that sense for several years. And they increase in learning, they increase in literacy. And so because I really see that those families that are low income need an accurate, equitable education that emphasizes literacy, in so doing, and I can relate to that, that's why I'm running.
Well, that's quite a story. You're coming from a large family. You're a product of the school system. You, at one point, were working two jobs while homeschooling your younger siblings. That's a heavy responsibility. Congratulations for getting all that in one very short span. How old are you? How old are you?
I'm 27.
You're 27. Well, you look about
Yes.
22 or 23. I would have picked that 22, 23. So it must be good genetics. Anyway, let's share. Well, by the way, we're going to come back to Elrawd. We're going to actually share the screen for his website. Because it's very, very clear what he is doing on the website, and I want to share that with folks. But let's move to Brian Campbell. Brian Campbell is probably more well-known than Elrawd. Elrawd is really a fresh new face and voice here in Santa Barbara. But Brian ran unsuccessfully in a razor-thin loss for the city council. How many votes did you lose by, Brian? What was the vote?
A couple hundred.
Couple of hundred, yeah. Out of thousands and thousands of votes.
There's about 11,000 registered voters in our district. So
Wow.
For running for the city council.
Right.
So,
And as a gentleman, go ahead.
Oh no, go ahead.
No, I was just going to ask you to. People know you because you have your own real estate company. You're a husband. You're a father. You have children in the school district, and so explain why is it that you are running for the school district board of trustees?
Yeah, a really good question. People say, "Why are you running again?" You know, my city council campaign began a year ago based upon the safety of the children here at our local elementary school. And that's where my heart has always been, with children and their safety and their education. And as a parent of two children in our local schools, I've volunteered for 9 years and served our PTA for 5 years. I've been in the schools teaching science, teaching reading, and seeing the kids grow and develop throughout the years. And I've noticed that the school has been progressing along this status quo of barely getting by on literacy. And I know we all talk about literacy rates as, half the district can read and write, but it's actually a much deeper issue than that. When we take a look at the Hispanic population, our Hispanic students, they're actually below an average of 35% can read and write at grade level, while other students are up ranked around the 80 percentile. And that's why we get about that half of our students who cannot read and write well. The district is failing our Hispanic community primarily. Mm-hmm. And it's incredibly egregious. I'm from New York. I'm from a much more diverse background. My father is a retired school teacher. My sisters are school teachers. I grew up in an educator's household in New York, a very democratic state, obviously. Mm-hmm. And it's very saddening. It's very upsetting to see how a school is leaving behind, especially one whole demographic. School education is supposed to be for everybody. It's supposed to be equal education amongst everybody. And those that need the help are supposed to get help with their education. And that's not what's happening. And there's a huge lack of transparency in our district as well, which you can see just recently. A head custodian for the district was arrested for sex abuse against a minor, for having child pornography, and for using lookholes to obtain the child pornography, I assume. Yeah. And the district didn't feel a need to tell any parents. By the way, we have this. Yeah, it's ridiculous. We all found out from an article on Ed Hat. I love Ed Hat. But why doesn't the district tell us about these things?
Yeah.
Okay. Why are they hiding these things from us? It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. There's a lack of leadership and a lack of transparency, a lack of communication, and they are not working together with the community, and they are not working for the community, and that's why I'm running for school board.
Well, it seems right at the get-go, it seems that you two gentlemen have much in common. Just by these statements, you're both concerned with the lack of literacy, the failure rate among the students in Santa Barbara schools. Also, you're very concerned about the level of corruption and the lack of listening to the community, the lack of listening to parents. We're going to just take a look now at each of your websites, and I encourage all of the voters out there. I encourage you to actually record this program if you can, and follow the links to the website that we will provide in the description lines. So on MacLearn's for Santa Barbara Unified School Board, we can see, for instance, that he has a very clear statement about what compels him as a young non-parent to run for the Santa Barbara Unified School, who he is, and most interesting, we hear about his background, and he's 27 years old, but he's already lived a very, very full life. And here's what he wants to push for. He wants to representing parents on the school board, reduce class sizes, restore learning language and arts, increase language arts and math proficiency, require logic and philosophy. Now, as a former professor of philosophy at Santa Barbara City College, I looked at this and I said, yay, Elrawd has my vote. Unfortunately, I can't vote. I'm not in Santa Barbara, I'm in Carpinteria. But we're going to get into that. Why is it that you want to require logic and philosophy in order to graduate from college? When I was going through college, it was required. It is no longer required since 1972. That's how long it's been. And so let's take a look, if we can, at Brian Campbell's. While we've got the screen properly shared. This is Brian Campbell's website. And again, you can see his issues by clicking here on the issues. And he is centering on ethnic unity, bullying and racism, equal education. Not all schools are funded equally, he says, and not all schools provide the same resources. That is not an equal education, he says, as required by our state constitution. So you can read all about that, transparency and accountability. And look, both gentlemen have the issue of literacy and the issue of supporting teachers and community outreach. So I'm going to stop sharing and go back to the control booth. Hey, I actually did that. I'm getting good at this. All right, so folks have seen your websites, and I certainly encourage them to visit them and explore them more fully. So let's get into, I like to start these programs with easing in through the portal of what are your principles and values as Americans. Because I think it's important that we understand not only what you are pushing for and what you stand for, what you want to do on the board, but why you think the way you think, and especially about human freedom. So Elrawd, back to you. Can you explain, especially since you insist upon logic and philosophy as a requirement for graduation, what are your general principles and values as a person and as an American?
Yeah, so as an American, and this is why I believe that logic and philosophy should be a graduation requirement in high school, is that we as Americans have not systemic racism, but a systemic morality. We as a people are very much in tune with what is right, what is wrong, and we as a country and as a nation want to right those wrongs. We have had, mess ups in the past, but we as a nation recognize those things and we correct them. For example, over 600,000 Americans died in the Civil War because we recognized there is this issue, slavery, and people are equal. They do have inalienable rights. And so let's correct that. And unfortunately, we had to have a war to do that. And we as a people are not hesitant to enter into battles for that very same reason. We fought against ISIS most recently, and it wasn't because of money or power or some kind of land. We understood that these people are evil and we need to correct that. And we have, as I said, a systemic morality. And that's something that I really hold dear and want to promote in our educational system. This ethnic studies course that is being promoted here in the California state and is now a graduation requirement through every public school in this state, doesn't really emphasize that. And that's why I want us to be able to think critically and understand the philosophical motivation of what it means to be an American, what it means to support the flag, what it means to be a patriot, and what have we done as a nation? How are we multiculturally different than every other place in the world, and how has it worked? How can people come here? And this is a land of immigrants, and we've melted together in a sense and become prosperous. So those are the underpinnings of my philosophy as an American, and this is what I'm proud of.
That's really
I
great.
feel like in our
That's really great. I want to shift it over to Brian and ask him to respond in kind. What are your principles and values as an American, as a person, that propel you to step up and get into the arena and do what Elrawd is doing and actually run for public office?
Yeah, good question. That's just it. I see myself as an American. I don't see myself as a German American. My great grandparents moved here to escape the oppression and the adversity of their home country, and they chose to be a part of this melting pot that's America. I don't see skin color, sex, or whatever your preferences are. I see you as a person. I see your culture. I see a great part of your history, and we've all come together sharing our cultures and our history and working together to build a greater tomorrow, to build this country. That's what this country was. Is it's supposed to be a melting pot. All these bullying and racism and intolerances are big issues, and they're big issues for me because it creates divisiveness. It divides the people. It pits children against children. It pits races against races. And I've seen more adults acting in racist and bullying fashion than children. And to be quite honest with you, children learn this behavior from somewhere. This has to stop. It's ridiculous. It's not just the children that we have this in schools, it's also the adults. And we need to start acting like adults, and we need to start acting like mentors to our young people, because the young people are the ones who are going to turn around and bring us together and find solutions to the world. They are our future, and we need to make sure they know that and they receive all of the encouragement and tools and help in order to make that happen.
Well, apparently both of you agree. Well, we're getting an echo there. Both of you agree that civics must be an essential part of the curriculum. I know that school boards routinely around the state, when they adopt these highly controversial ethnic and sexual education programs, then the parents rise up in righteous indignation, saying that we don't want our Western culture to be destroyed by this divisive, as Brian put it, this divisive grouping of people, setting one person against the other, students against parents, parents against students and teachers. Both of you seem to agree that civics is an important element, but is it currently being taught? Is it, and who is teaching it? And who is doing the hiring at the school board for these positions? Is civics, traditional Western civilization civics, being taught in the Santa Barbara Unified School District at the present time? Either one of you.
Yes, it's traditional education that's being taught, but we have social studies and we have others that talk about this nation's history. And I believe that we need more ethnic studies to actually talk about all the ethnicities that have come together to help form this country. So yes, I believe we need to expand that out so we can learn more about our minorities and all the other people. For example, we had the Chinese come over, and they are the ones that did most of the work for the railroad, you know, and as well as the blacks that we brought over as slaves that dug through tunnels and did all this hard labor. We need to talk about that history and those plights, but we need to talk about all of it. And the ethnic studies in Santa Barbara only talks about one minority, only one background, and most of the ethnic studies to date with like organizations like Just Communities doesn't teach ethnic studies to the entire class, and it's not all inclusive of all minorities and all the troubles and plights that they've gone through. Mm-hmm. So that's the issue, and that's where we all need to come together so we can learn as a group, so this way we can move forward together as a group and understand each other's adversities.
Mm-hmm. Elrawd, let me ask you, Elrawd. Let's examine the excuse that the present school board uses when they are confronted by irate parents, as they were this past week. The school board and the superintendent simply say, well, we're just enacting state law. We're not. This isn't coming from us. We're just rubber stamping whatever the state has told us to do and the county has told us to do. When you're on the school board, Elrawd, are you going to take that? Are you going to be a rubber stamp for the county and the state, or are you going to carve your own trail?
So the state does create a model curriculum and a framework for the courses that are required through the California Department of Education. However, there is a certain amount of leeway written into each course and framework that allows the board to work together with the community, the parents, and the teachers to really craft a curriculum that is applicable to that community, that district, and best helps educate those children. Mm-hmm. So, for example, big popular controversial curriculum that was just approved was the Teen Talk curriculum, which is a sexual education curriculum for junior high students. And the parents had wanted this curriculum that was called the Heart curriculum. It was accredited or compliant, with the California Healthy Youth Act. And the district wanted and adopted eventually this other curriculum called Teen Talk, which is also compliant with the California Healthy Youth Act. So both curriculums were compliant under the law. And I, on the school board in the future, if I come to that same type of situation, would go with what the parents want, because both curriculums are legally approved and compliant, but it is in the best interest of the community in this scenario and in that scenario to go with what the parents want and what the community wants. So as a board member in the future, I will best serve the parents, and I'm elected by the parents, so I'm supposed to represent the parents in their desires and what the district needs as a whole. So Monday morning quarterbacking, I will always, in that scenario, I would have picked Heart curriculum for the parents.
And not the Teen Talk. You would have voted against Teen Talk?
Yes.
Ryan, would you have voted against Teen Talk?
I would have voted against Teen Talk because there were about 1,000 parents that signed petitions to not have it passed. At the numerous school board meetings over the last year, anytime this topic has come up, there have been close to 100, if not more, people who sign up to attend the meetings and speak out about Teen Talk, most of which oppose Teen Talk. I'm also opposed to Teen Talk because of the lack of transparency. For example, the school board, the school district says that they had community meetings. These community meetings were not titled sexual education talks. They were titled as health education talks. And I know when my wife and I went to one of these meetings, there were only 10 parents in the room, 8 other parents besides myself. And that's where I think we heard one of the board members talk about how they had a very low turnout at these community meetings and discussions about Teen Talk. I was like, well, of course there was a low turnout. You didn't bother to tell people what you were actually talking about and discussing at these. And given the low turnout, yet the high amount of people who are protesting at their board meetings on a regular basis and signing petitions shows that perhaps their community outreach wasn't as efficient as it should have been, considering all the amount of outreach. But the district has a history of doing this. They turn around and make up their decision, like killing the GATE magnet program. You know, over a year ago, Raul Ramirez, I questioned him in one of those quote unquote public forums about GATE, and I asked him if it was a successful program. And Raul Ramirez says, yes, it's a successful program, but we're terminating it anyway. I said, well, why are you terminating a successful program? Why are you not expanding a successful program? But again, the board has a history of this, such as Washington Elementary and Franklin Elementary with the curriculum specialists have a great track record with reading and writing and literacy proficiency amongst our Hispanic and our lower socioeconomic kids. And look at Franklin now has a 57% literacy rate with a 91% Hispanic population. Yet the board says, oh no, Adelante School is a model of success. They have bilingual education. In fact, they believe in Adelante so much that they've passed bilingual education as a requirement under the school district, and they're rolling out McKinley, despite the fact that only 20% of Adelante can read and write at grade level. 80% failure rate. 80% failure rate is what they tout as being a model of success. So are they listening? Now it's an election. Now you get them talking about how, ooh, Franklin's doing a great job. But they haven't shown it. Their actions show that they don't believe in Franklin. They don't believe in Washington, that they believe in bilingual education, which through Adelante has shown a proven track record of failing the Hispanic population. So again, the board's not listening. They're just telling you what you want to hear while they do what they're going to do without any regard for the students or the families.
So it would seem from what the two of you are saying and agreeing on, it would seem to me that this would explain why there are 7 candidates for 3 seats, whereas normally elections on school boards go pretty much unnoticed. They don't require a lot of attention or get a lot of attention. Why is it that parents are rising up? I'm asking an obvious question here, but I would like to hear from you, both of you. Why do you think parents are rising up and demanding a greater degree of participation in the decisions of the school board, especially the new supervisor, hiring Just Communities Central Coast to, I don't know, we'll get into what they're doing in a bit. But why do you suppose parents are finally waking up? Is it because now they are running classes online and parents are actually seeing how teachers are teaching and what they're teaching? Or what's the explanation that you have? Why is this sudden resurgence of interest in running for the school board? Either of you.
You know, that's a good question, Mark. You know, there's been a lot of controversy for the last 4 years. It's not just recently within the last year. You have when Matsuoka superintendent was hired, and Matsuoka is one of those people with lack of morals, where he admitted to lying under oath about Principal Barron's, a beloved principal. He admitted he lied under oath. And that's the problem, is that we've had personalities like Matsuoka underneath this board, and this board hasn't been supervising any of it. And so you get people have been getting fed up throughout the last at least 4 years. And now that we have an election, people are very much adamant and voicing their opinion because they're tired of the BS that's been going on for the last 4 years. They're tired of the mad sex scandal academies. They're tired of the superintendent Matsuoka hired a dean of students at Dos Pueblos High School where his wife allegedly statutorily raped students. And this is all over Google. With a simple Google search, you can turn this up, yet they hired him. We have a head custodian at Santa Barbara High School who was just arrested for child pornography and using lookholes to spy on children. There's a huge history of this lack of caring about our kids over the last several years. And that's why people are speaking up, because they're fed up with it.
Elrawd, it seems like you're arrived, Elrawd. You have been advocating for parental priority. As you said a few moments ago, parents pay the taxes that pay for the teachers, that pay for the services, that pay for the school board, that pay for the whole operation, the system. And you have been advocating since the very get-go, since you left school yourself, you've been advocating for the priority of listening to parents. Do you think that's your message is finally resonating with the electorate?
I think it is definitely resonating with the electorate. And I also will say it is not something that is resonating with the board at all. And then kind of going off what Brian was talking about, there's just so many parents that have come to me and told me their horror stories, in a sense, about how the district has refused to continue programs that were successful. Also, there's this program at La Cumbra Junior High called the Core Knowledge Program, which was another big ordeal a couple of years ago, where you had a successful program that was doing very well, and the students were, succeeding, and they were it was a program that was challenging higher achieving students to be engaged and to really succeed far beyond what they could have afforded just by going to regular classes. And the district wanted to shut it down. Thankfully, a lot of parents rallied together and prevented that from happening. So yeah, there is a lot of disconnect between the district and the parents. And also, I would also say the disconnect has continued because the board has just this week approved and supports Proposition 15, which will raise the property tax on commercial buildings and homes, which will drive out a lot of businesses here in our community. And it's really going to be detrimental to this economy and hurt parents and hurt families. So this whole board is very anti-parents, anti-family, and really anti-education, which is what they're supposed to do. And that's their fundamental, primary, basic goal. And they failed at that.
Yeah, I also want to add, the board is very much out of touch. I mean, one board member has a student in the schools here. The rest of the board members, there's no diversity amongst the board, and none of them have children in the district. None of them have a vested interest in the schools and the education of the children. Wow. That's just wrong.
Wow. I didn't know that. Yeah. I didn't realize that. I didn't realize. How many people who are running, of the 7 candidates in this election, how many of them are incumbent? How many are incumbents?
Three of the candidates are incumbents. So all the incumbents are running for re-election.
Oh, wow. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Now these elections are traditionally labeled nonpartisan. I always smirk when I hear that. I always smirk when I hear that these elections to school boards are nonpartisan. And yet the curriculum reflects the worldview and the political outlook of only one political party, namely the Democrat Party.
I would say, and this is something I brought up several board meetings ago, where it was clear that the Democratic Party has a vested interest in the school board, because in order to get an endorsement by the Democratic Central Committee, the candidates had to state whether or not they supported ethnic studies, whether or not they supported just communities, and whether or not they supported the teen talk, sexual education curriculum. So it is very political.
Wow.
And I entered this race just, parents and literacy, and let's focus on education. And I might have been a little naive to think that I could be, and this election would be truly nonpartisan, and it has been shown not to be that.
Wow. Ryan, what's your view on the nonpartisan aspect of this race?
Nonpartisan. I am against labels, especially when it comes down to working for the greater good of the people. And labels are another form of name calling. They're another form of bullying. They're another form of potential racism. They're another form to create division amongst people. And I think Martin Luther King had said that we're supposed to judge people based upon their virtue. I don't see anything like that occurring. I see in not just our town, but unfortunately our country, is that people judge you based upon the label of your political affiliation. They don't judge you based upon the words that come out of your mouth or how you feel. Like, for example, we had Jerry Roberts' Newsmaker show with Delaney and Josh Molina. Turn around and Josh says, oh, well, Brian's struggling with his conservative side and trying to do what's right by the people or something like that with ethnic studies. I said, why are you putting a label on me and my beliefs? Okay, my beliefs, I speak how I feel, I speak what I mean, and I do as I say I'm going to do, which is obviously a new concept amongst this world of politicians, as we've seen on this board and many other boards, that there are career politicians that use this as stepping stones, just waiting for the next election to jump ship and go run someplace else, especially those people that have been career politicians or in politics as a career. I'm not a politician. Elrawd's not a politician. I'm a father. I'm a businessman. I run a company with 185 employees. We manage contracts and social relationships and human resources on a regular basis. Okay, I balance a checkbook every single day. And on top of that, working an 8-hour work week, I turn around and I take out time out of every week to be inside a classroom with the children to see the education firsthand and to help the teachers, because the teachers need a tremendous amount of help. which is why we also created the Teachers Fund 20 years ago, was to donate money directly to the teachers, because we recognize that teachers need help. So I'm tired of people judging me based upon my skin color. I'm tired of people judging me based upon my religion or my conservative views. Okay? I believe we should be taking care of our neighbors. I believe we should be educating all children equally, not just the rich, not just the poor. It's incredibly, I'm incredibly disappointed in our government and our school board, and from what I've seen from the unequal education amongst the different children and the excuses that are made on a regular basis why certain kids can't read and learn. They make excuses. Oh, they're Hispanic, they're low socioeconomic, their parents work hard. Stop making the excuses and let's go to work. We have two great models in this district that work, Franklin and Washington Elementary. Expand the successful models. Stop looking for your own self-interest. Stop being a politician. Be a parent. Be a mentor. Take care of our children.
Wow. Elrawd, has the media tried to pigeonhole you into a political position? How has the media perceived you, and how have they carried your message, if they indeed have?
Yeah, so they definitely have tried to pigeonhole me to some kind of category. And, I want to be viewed as someone who is passionate about literacy, education, and that parental engagement, which is necessary for academic success. However, I was just listening to a news video last night, and they were talking, and they keep trying to pair Brian and I with this literacy rights group called Fair Education, which is, honestly, I think Fair Ed supports a lot of good things, and they want literacy, and they want transparency, and they want parents to get involved. So they want a lot of great things, and I don't typically understand the seething hatred that the media has against them. It might have something to do with some of the litigation that they've brought against the school board for some controversies in the past. But yes, they do try to categorize me as someone who is this, person who just is a conservative, just spouting conservative ideas and doesn't really believe anything that I say, which is not true. I am someone who has seen the achievement gap in our community and in my own life. And I know that the only way to close that gap is to truly teach literacy and education. This ethnic studies that they have adopted and want to make this graduation requirement, its purported goal was to close the achievement gap. But the only way we can do that is to focus on literacy, to focus on education and critical thinking. That's the only way. Some of my heroes are people like Frederick Douglass and Booker T. Washington, or even Ben Carson. And the way that they achieved success in life was through literacy, through education, and through the parents. For Ben Carson, his mother really pushed him to succeed and to study and to, have some kind of success. Frederick Douglass and Booker T. Washington were former slaves. You can't get more oppressed than that. Right. And the way that they achieved greatness was through literacy. They learned how to read and write and to think critically. So those are the ways that someone who is of low standing in life can reach to the top. And that's what education is about. Education is not just some rote memorization, but it's learning and training a person to become a better, helpful individual in society. And that's what we're trying to achieve, and that's what we're trying to create. And this is why literacy is so important. Education and critical thinking is vastly important.
Well, yeah, I mirror them. Yeah, we need to not just have kids memorize the alphabet and the times tables. Kids have to be taught how to think, how to solve problems. They need to be taught critical thinking. And it's interesting you bring up, two of your mentors as being previous slave people. When you don't educate a certain segment of people, it's because you're trying to suppress them. You're trying to keep them down. Okay, that's what we did with slavery. That's what they did with women. Women around the world, and still people today, are kept down, and they're not educated. because that's how the government, that's how the powers control them. And when you look at the divide in our literacy rate, our Hispanic population has a literacy issue. And we have a school board, a government entity that is not benefiting them and not trying to lift them up and trying to educate them, which is an effect of the old days of slavery. They don't want to educate them. They don't want to be lifted up. They don't want them to leave Santa Barbara. They don't want them to get good, high-paying jobs, because as soon as people have something else to focus on and work towards, they're not miserable anymore. They don't woe is me around. They don't band together. They don't gossip. They're focused on their own lives and their own personal achievements. And in essence, that's what our school board is doing, is by keeping the Hispanic population down, is they're keeping a thumb of control over our local Hispanic population. And it's really sad to see. It's disheartening. It really, really is.
Well, I have a recommendation for both of you in this campaign. Next time you're asked if you're a Democrat or a Republican, just simply say, no, I'm a philosopher. That's what I do.
I like that.
Just say I'm a philosopher. I'm not a Democrat. I'm not a Republican. Are you a liberal or conservative? No, I'm a philosopher. Yeah. And then they have to ponder what a philosopher is. And when I was teaching critical thinking and writing and teaching philosophy of education, my principle was, if my students need me to keep learning after the class is over, I deserve an F. My job is to put myself out of business, not perpetuate myself in business. My job is to make myself dispensable to my students. So this idea of education, meaning pouring something into a brain or pouring something into a mind to achieve a predetermined state outcome, goes back to John Dewey, the philosophy of John Dewey, the American philosopher. He's the one who's responsible for this nonsense. Instead of the classical education, which was, when you go to college at Oxford or Cambridge or any of the great schools of Europe, you make your own curriculum. You sign up for what you go to see the professors and listen to the professors that you want to associate with. You're not jammed into a conveyor belt of state regulated curriculum. So I see your problem. Your problem is that your students are not free to think, because the teachers are not free to think, because the school board is not free to think, because the legislature is not free to think. There's a party line aspect to all of this. So I sympathize with both of you, what you're going through, because this is not education. Let's get into the just communities. It seems that social education has replaced literacy. Social education has replaced math. Social education has replaced educating in technology and in science in the school system. Enter a group called Just Communities Central Coast, whose number 2 person is on the school board? Ooh, is that right,
Assistant
Brian?
Superintendent.
The assistant
Superintendent.
Is a officer in Just Communities?
Yes. So an assistant superintendent is the number 2 for Just Communities. And of course, as we know and as we've learned, Just Communities is a nonprofit that was hired by the board without obtaining any competing bids whatsoever. So that's a conflict of interest, in my opinion.
What do they do? What does Just Communities do? What's their philosophy of education?
So from my understanding of Just Communities, because Just Communities, I've tried to talk to them. They will not talk. I've been to their public meeting held at City College. It's not what they're doing in the classroom. They hide behind a veil of secrecy. When you ask to read their curriculum, they hide behind intellectual property rights, saying you can't look at our curriculum because of intellectual property rights. Now, they're in a public school teaching my minor children. I have a right to know, what are they teaching to the children in my school? What kind of curriculum are they rolling out? They've escaped this by, they don't teach ethnic culture to the entire school or the entire classroom. They only teach it to a few minor children that they pull out and they have separate sessions of. Again, ethnic education is supposed to be about all ethnicities that created this culture, that created where we are, talking about all of their diversities. It's not about one ethnicity, and it's supposed to be taught to the entire school, the entire student population, so we can get to know together what other people's issues and adversities have been, so we can work together. That's not just communities. Just communities is divisive and separating children and pitting child against child.
Elrawd,
Yeah,
what's your percent? Go ahead, Elrawd.
So this just communities is predicated on critical race theory, which says that there's this big fancy word, hegemony, which means there are the oppressed and there are the oppressors. And what they're telling these children is that there are the oppressors, which are, white, successful two-parent families, usually conservative Christian people that are oppressing the other minorities, being Black, Hispanic, etc. And that is, for one, discriminatory against anyone who's a white person, because that's just not true. One of the things that I personally can relate to this is, for a time, my family actually was homeless due to some extenuating circumstances. And it was a group of white conservative Christian people that helped my family find a house, find a place, and were able to pay for us to, stay somewhere temporarily for that. So I have been helped a lot. My family has been helped a lot through the goodness and the kindness of these oppressors, and that are being promoted in this Just Communities curriculum and things. So I just see it something that's not true. And they're creating this paradigm where you have these children who are becoming hurt and aggrieved for no real reason. And it's not unifying at all. Like Brian was saying, it's very divisive. So in a sense, it's fostering and creating more of an issue, and it's not rectifying any racial issues at all, but creating a worse problem.
Yeah, that's the big thing. Yeah, that's definitely the big thing is that, and it's not just communities anymore. Now the ninth grade English class talks about ethnic cultures, and it specifically talks about white oppression against minorities. That was in the syllabus that came home in my daughter's work pack. So again, our ethnic studies aren't teaching about the different ethnic cultures that came together to create this country, and doesn't talk about why they were treated poorly back then. What they're doing is today is they're trying to separate out races, and they're pitting each race against each other. For example, as Elrawd talked about, them talking about the haves, the have-nots, and they're saying that basically if you're a white conservative male, they're the root of all evil, and they're successful. When you take a look around where most people are working, hardworking families, I'd like to know, how is my family oppressing my neighbor or the people down the street or anybody else who might be of a different skin color, different culture, different religion? How am I doing that? I'm not. Actually, our company, we employ over 185 people from all different races and genders and sexual preferences. And we donate money and time to schools and other heart association and everything else. So how is it that people call me names and say that I'm oppressing them? That's unheard of. Mm-hmm. I'm not the top 1% of people that's not paying into the system. This is ridiculous.
Yeah. And I also want to say that, Brian and I both want ethnic studies in the sense of a curriculum and a course that unifies the different ethnicities and promotes the benefits and the each ethnicity can bring to the table and the great things that have happened in the past and how we all can work together to promote great things in the future. That's what we hope to achieve and we really want in our school system, not something that's going to be divisive. And so we as Americans are a multicultural nation. And so we can celebrate that and we have worked together. And there are many ways and scenarios where people have worked together regardless of race. And that is something that we want to promote and celebrate in the ethnic studies course, and not just talk about, these things are super negative, but hey, we have a nation, we've had issues, we've worked on those issues, we're improving, and here are ways where we can improve. And the ways we do that is through personal responsibility, individual integrity. Also, I have been pulled over by the police before. People have called the cops on me before because I possibly looked a certain way or a certain neighborhood at a certain time. But how I was able to come out of those scenarios in a better way for everybody was because of my own individual integrity. And I didn't have this mindset of, oh, you know, these police officers are, you know, just trying to oppress me and all of that. No, these interactions that I've had with the police in the past have been very respectful and understanding of their position. And also, a lot of times these perceived prejudices are merely ignorance, where people don't know me. And so it is my responsibility to show them my integrity. And in doing that, all these different scenarios that could have gone wrong, they have ended quite well. And that's what we need to teach our children in our schools. And also, as Brian was talking earlier, you know, adults too need to know that is our own individual integrity and care for other people, regardless of what they look like, their status, or anything of that nature, will create more unity. And that's what we need to focus on, not our differences.
Well, apparently we're reaching almost the end of our show here. So I'm just going to inject this one thought and get your reactions to it. In 1960, the President of the United States challenged the young people of this country to ask not what your country can do for you, but ask what you can do for your country. That spirit of voluntarism and patriotism has been completely eradicated by critical theory, as Elrawd has pointed out. But if you scratch the surface of critical thinking, what do you find? You find Marxism. And I think the American people are finally waking up to the fact that all this wonderful critical thinking where we cancel everything in our previous culture is really the work of Karl Marx. And we know that Marxism, in its socialist incarnation, simply does not work. So I think both of you have got your work cut out for you, because you're not only dealing with the school board and the school system and all of the paid entrenched people in the administration and the faculty. You're dealing with a hostile media that wants to destroy you and destroy your mindset and destroy your worldview and destroy your freedom. So I want to thank both of you for being on the program, and I encourage our viewers to go to their websites, read for yourself what they have to say. And remember that ballots are coming out in only 9 days from this broadcast. In 9 days, people are going to be receiving their ballots. And don't forget, 80% of the people that receive a formerly absentee ballot, now a mail-in ballot, 80% of those people will probably vote within the first 10 days of receiving that ballot. Oh, somebody just crashed a car outside the studio here. In any case, I want to thank both of you, gentlemen. I wish you much success. I don't know whether I feel happy for if you're elected or sad, because I know what you're up against. I know, but congratulations for being in the arena and for protecting individual freedom and for being our guests here on Freedom Matters. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.